Did we go too big? After the initial shock of why on earth would y'all sell everything and move into a camper full time, I think the most common concern was why on earth did you go with a 42-foot fifth wheel with your only other prior experience being unable to tow and back up a 10-foot pop-up camper?
So with no towing experience except that pop-up camper, we decided we got the biggest one we could find.
Now that we've been living full-time in this 42-foot fifth wheel for 8 months, did we make a mistake? We're going to go over the pros and the cons of owning a big fifth wheel, and then at the end our overall thoughts of if we could go back, would we go smaller, or did we make the right decision and go with the 42-foot?
Okay. Okay.
What did you do?
I don't even know.
How did that happen?
I just moved my leg. So first, let's talk about the pros of owning something this big. We're going to talk about it from the aspect of the size of our family, the comfort of our family, Clint being able to work on the road, and driving and parking in this thing.
First is family size. Obviously, we are a family of 5. We've got 2 dogs also. Anything too small, we would have really felt cramped. We also came from a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that was around 1,400 square feet. We initially did think of going with something smaller.
Yeah.
But the more we thought about it, the more we saw layouts, the more we thought about storage capacity, how much weight you could carry, it made more sense for us to get something bigger.
Something that people don't always realize is that these campers have a capacity as far as weight. We have the dry weight of our camper, which is what is on labels and stuff, that tells you, okay, shipped from the factory, that's how much this thing weighs. Well, then you have a cargo capacity saying, okay, you can put this much stuff into that camper, which leads you to your gross vehicle weight capacity, okay? For us, we have around 2,000 pounds of cargo capacity that we can put in this thing, which adds up really fast. So when we looked, we just tried to find something that was in our price range, that gave us the rooms and things that we wanted, that had the highest cargo capacity we could find. Now, we would honestly love to get even bigger than that, but we also had to think about the towing capacity of our truck. So that brings us into the comfort of our family in the space that we did buy. So a couple of things that were important to us is that we wanted to make sure that everyone had their own sleeping spaces. You know, at first, Lucas and Harper decided to sleep in the loft together. You know, we put the queen bed out, we separated them in the middle, and they both had their own spaces. And that worked for a little while. But then they decided, you know what, we're not really liking this, we don't have enough of our own space, we don't have enough privacy, so we moved Lucas into the bunk room, and Harper stayed in the loft, and we redid that. You can go back and watch our video showing you what we did up there. And then we also redid the mid-bunk for Lucas. We have a video on that as well. And then eventually, if we can ever get Theo out of our bed, he's going to go in there with Big Brother. So there's going to be a boys' room and then the girls' area. So, of course, you know, coming from our house, they both had their own room. Being able to have their own spaces was important to us when we were looking. The idea of only having one bunk room just didn't really... It wasn't appealing to us because we wanted them to be able to get separate if they wanted to. That way, if they needed some privacy or they needed some time by themselves, they had that.
And they are both, we don't know what Theo's going to be like, but the older two, they are kind of independent by nature. So I think they do get tired of each other and us.
Yeah, they definitely need to kind of hide away and recharge every now and then.
In addition to having their own rooms, we also wanted a bigger living space.
I really wanted all 5 of us to be able to sit in the living area together, because sometimes in a camper there's only a space for like one small couch. Well, that's not going to fit all of us. But I also wanted the kids to have room to play on the floor in here. You know, Theo is getting to that age where he's going to be playing on the floor. The kids sometimes will play games and things on the floor. So I wanted to have as big of a living area as we could find.
And this particular living area is fantastic, but we'll talk about why we chose this specific camper in some other video. Another important factor when it comes to comfort was the downsizing. So we went from 1,400 square feet to less than 400. So I don't know if you've ever moved from a house to a camper, the amount of stuff that you've got to get rid of can be pretty shocking.
Yeah.
And when we first started, I think one of Sarah's main concerns is that it was going to be too much and all of us were going to hate it. So having a bigger camper allowed us to keep a lot of stuff that, if you're going from 1,400 square foot to a 30-foot camper, you got to get rid of almost everything. Whereas in a 42-foot camper, we got to keep a lot of things that we might otherwise have had to get rid of, which I think over time we've learned we brought a lot of crap we didn't actually need.
Yes, that is one thing. If you were in this process, you're going to keep stuff. You should go weigh yourself before you set out. We did. The night before we left, we were in here with the scale, getting rid of stuff, weighing it to bring down our weight because we didn't want to be that close to our top pulling this thing. We want to try to be safe.
The third pro is work. Work's a big deal, especially for us. I have to work for us to be able to do this. Sarah homeschools the kids, so that's their work. So we needed something big enough to have separation. I'm sure some of you are patient enough to sit in the midst of all of your family and work away. I am not that guy. So having a 42-foot fifth wheel, almost all of them, you've got your bedroom on one side, the living space on the other, or at least some form of separation. So that was key for us, to be able to go and work, especially with conference calls, things like that. It's hard to keep kids quiet, especially 10, 8, and 2. It's very difficult. So that was important.
We also wanted to make sure that even if Clint was working somewhere, that we had somewhere comfortable to do school. At home, our dining room table was kind of the hub of the house. I spent most of my time in the kitchen, cleaning, and the laundry room was right there, and I did all of the house management stuff at the laptop, at the table. So having that space, the dining area space, and other possibilities for us to be able to school, we spend most of our time at that dining table in here doing school, but we can also come and spread out on the floor in here if we want to, or on the couch, or if Clint's got something going on and he's in here working, we can go to Mom and Dad's room for a little while, and be separate. We can always separate ourselves and still be comfortable.
I think we were worried about either they all have to tiptoe around and you can't do school because I'm in a conference call, or I'm unable to work because they're listening to a history lesson on the TV and I'm trying to work. It kills all those distractions.
Yeah.
And usually we are all together.
Yeah, we are normally in this main area.
If we need to separate, we've got plenty of room to do it.
When we first started looking, we were looking for a travel trailer because they were less expensive. We wanted to get the nicest we could for the budget that we had. Well, then everybody said, oh, it's so much harder to pull them and it's so much harder to park them, and we don't know, right? That pop-up camper that Clint could literally just lift up and move with his arms was all the experience that we had. So we had no idea. Well, then we start looking and people are like, no, you have to go as long as you can go. Because Clint's find the shortest one. And we're like, well, why? And people said, well, they're a lot easier to maneuver when they're longer. I guess that's true. We don't know the other. I mean, the pop-up camper, I know you can jackknife that thing really fast, so I guess it's true. But everybody kept saying, you have more time to get situated and things like that if you go longer. So all of that, we have all these voices going on as I'm researching and looking. And then the layout that we did want was bigger. In order to get the mid-bunk, you did have to go, in the 40-foot range. So here we are.
Yeah, I think so the first three, family size, comfort, and work, I think that got us to where we were looking at 36 to 38 foot campers. And then we did hear from people, and these were guys that they have experience towing, and told us that, longer is actually easier because you don't have to overcorrect as much. You can just make adjustments, it moves slower. And so that's what ultimately pushed us okay, well, if we're going with 38, we might as well go with 42, get the layout we wanted. Yeah. So I think driving and parking was kind of the tipping point that sent us to the length we got.
And then another really important thing to all of us was bathroom access.
Yes.
We wanted if we needed to pull over on the side of the road really quick and someone has to use the bathroom, we wanted to be able to get to the bathroom. If we ever get caught and we need to be able to, you know, access bedrooms and access the bathroom and stuff without all of our slides out, that was important to be able to get to all those. And we can. We can easily access the loft for kids to sleep in. We can easily access the bed in our room for people to sleep in. Now, it wouldn't be, you know, the same as usual, you know, most comfortable thing, but we could do it.
And not to labor the point too much, but bathroom access is worth an extra 10 feet, in my opinion.
One more thing, we were told also that a fifth wheel is safer to tow. So not only the backing and stuff, but people said that a fifth wheel can be safer to tow because you don't have to worry about tail.
The sway.
Yeah, the sway. You don't have to worry about the sway as much. And I'm not doing the towing. He's doing the towing, but we don't
I think
have
it's
any
true,
issues.
yeah. We've been in a few places where the wind has hit us, and I felt it, but not to the degree that I hear. This speculation. We haven't driven a big travel trailer, so if we're wrong on that, let us know in the comments. But that's what we've heard.
When we did have the pop-up camper, and we drove like an hour and a half to pick it up and back, we did have some tail sway.
Yeah.
We did have some sway on that.
And it was tiny, so the may offset. I don't know. Let people know in the comments if you've got a travel trailer.
Yeah.
I don't know. How does it work for you? Man, we were so scared of parking. And I don't even know how to articulate it properly, but literally did not think I'd ever get it into a spot.
But basically all of the driving and parking pros are met with most of our cons list. So, to us, the cons of owning something this large are parking, the driving, the truck size that we need, and then the amount of maintenance.
Parking, yes, we just mentioned it as a positive, a pro, and that's true. I think it is easy to not overcorrect. You can park slower and be okay.
Yeah.
However, it is a pain to, one, not even just park, but to get to your spot is sometimes difficult. And then two, to get in the spot can be difficult because, you know, normally you see people, they'll get close and then they just straighten it out. Well, when you've got 42 feet, you've got to have a long way in front of you or a long way behind you to straighten out. And with other campers parked across the street, trees behind you, a lot of times if you don't hit it pretty close, you've got to pull all the way out and redo the whole thing. So that's been a challenge, which I think gets easier with time, but certain spots, like where we are right now, it was just a real bear to get into.
And the reason that this spot was so hard to get into is because it was the only opening that they had left, but it's really meant for a smaller camper. You know, we're 42 feet, the site itself is 48 feet, so, okay, great. Well, we can't park the truck out front, so we had to park it beside, which is fine, but really, all in all, this site is meant for a smaller camper. Finding sites that fit our camper are sometimes more difficult.
Yeah, you may find a campsite that's got 100 sites, but your camper may only fit into 40 of them.
Yeah.
And then other big campers are already there, so then you've got 5 to select from.
Yeah.
And they're not always, you know, the best position. Also, with site selection, is where we are now is a state park. It's hard to get into a lot of state parks if you have 42
So we hear.
feet. Yeah, so we hear.
But we have experienced it here.
Yeah, so.
Like, I think at the state park that we're at now, I think there are around 4, there's under 10 for sure, 50 amp sites. Well, generally, the bigger the camper, the more likely you are to be 50 amp instead of 30 amp. So that just goes to show you that, yeah, there's not a lot of big sites here. The next thing that we're going to talk about is driving this thing. So we have measured, and we are around 13 something tall, okay? So we just use 13.6, okay? That's our height, because then we know that we should be safe, you know, on most roads that are meant for truck routes. It makes it really scary, though, especially driving the East Coast. We went under an overpass the other day that was 13.8. Like, we all shrunk down going under it. We've not had any bad experiences. You know, I do a lot of research, and we do use our RV Life GPS, our RV GPS subscription, and we've not had any issues. But that makes it scary. I mean, we're very tall. These overpasses, some of them are very low.
Especially on the East Coast, it makes you nervous because when you unhitch and then you drive through town, we went through
like 9 feet.
It was like 8 or 9 feet in Pennsylvania. The truck barely fit through. I almost pulled the mirrors in because I was like, we're not making, even the truck's not getting through.
Can you imagine making a wrong turn in this camper? But it goes back to, you really need an RV safe GPS. We use RV Life Pro. We will link our affiliate link in the description. We use it. We love it. We also always use a couple of backups. We always compare routes. I will even do research in groups and stuff, especially now that we're in the East Coast and we're getting higher, closer into New England here. Every time we leave somewhere, I research the routes.
The only other thing with driving is, one, your heights. You always got to watch your heights, which we just talked about, but it's also turn radius. You've got tail swing, and then also when you're 42 feet, you've got to really go way out and turn so you don't hit the curb on whichever side you're turning. So especially up north, fortunately up north, I've noticed they put their turning lanes way back to accommodate you. Yeah. So it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But we've been through some areas where if there had been a car in the turning lane, we would not have been able to turn without hitting the curb. But again, I think that's just something that with practice, we're not nearly as nervous about that as we were when we first started.
So another thing that goes into driving and parking and all that was the size of truck that we were going to need for this. So when we first started looking, we were looking at a Ford 7.3 liter engine, which is like, I think 03 and older, 2003 and older. That's what we were first looking at. Well, they didn't have the towing capacity that we felt comfortable with to tow something this big. I know some people do it. We have no towing experience. We wanted to make sure that we were being safe. We did not feel comfortable pulling something this big with that. So then we said, okay, we're going to spend a little bit more. So then we started looking at the next whatever of the truck, which would be around a 03 to something 6.0 and a Ford. Which, if you know anything about trucks, we know what we've got and all that, and thank you. But so we started looking at those, and we found one, and the weight capacity and the towing and all that on this truck could pull this comfortably, we felt like. So this is the weight that we kind of said, okay, we don't want to go any bigger than this. It's about 14.5, loaded, everything in. We started looking for campers that were that weight or under, and it did limit us. And we ended up bringing it down to like, I think 2 or 3 different campers that we could get that had the layout that we wanted. And this is the one that we found 7 hours away from us in Arkansas. So we drove, we hitched up, and then Clint said, okay, how do I drive it?
So this con is only related to the camper, but the truck, even when you're unhitched, we've got a long bed, it's huge, it's wide, you can't park it anywhere. And
we don't even have a dually. We knew for sure, you know, all the other things involved, we did not want to get a dually. It is still hard to maneuver. You know, we did get the long bed, that's what we found. We had a hard time finding what we wanted when we were looking, but then also, without the towing experience, getting a short bed probably would have ended in a couple of broken back windshields.
Yeah. We would have hit a couple of times where we haven't because we've got a long bed. But honestly, I know people will be like, you should have just got a dually. I could not be happier that we did not get a dually.
Yeah.
I only regret that we got a long bed, but only in theory because we would have had to replace the window a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I think it actually worked out great, but still is a con. We do love it. You know, no offense to all you Chevy and Dodge people, but we just like it. Heard good things about Ford.
Yeah.
From Ford people.
Yeah, we had a lot of Ford people around that were telling us, you know, they knew all the ins and outs of everything and what to look for. And we only had one, the only other one that we had giving us any advice that was a Dodge person had a ton of issues. Yeah. So that were like couldn't fix kind of issues. So
it's not Ford's fault. It's all those Chevy and Dodge drivers that don't say anything to us. It's their fault. So don't hate us for the Ford. And then the last con is maintenance. I think it's the bigger it is, the more stuff that seems to be able to break. I'm sure
more surface area.
Yeah, just more surface area. So you gotta wash it, it's more area. You got 2 ACs, which smaller ones may not have. We've got an outdoor kitchen because it's big, so now you've got all kinds of propane hookups. You got 2 propane tanks. So it's just a lot more to clean and to maintain than it would have been if we went with something smaller.
So looking back, do we think that going this big was worth it? Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. I did not know she was going to say yeah. I thought maybe it was enough. But I think it was definitely worth it. I think that if you get used to it and you can pare it down enough, we probably could go smaller. I don't think it would bother us much.
Yeah.
But considering going from a house to this first time, driving it around, even at its size, I think if we could go back in time, we would still go the same route.
Yeah. We don't have experience in anything else, so this is all we know. But I don't think we would really want a travel trailer. I think it would feel really confining now that we've had a fifth wheel with our tall ceilings and ton of understorage. So I think a travel trailer would just feel really limited, you know, if we were to go to a travel trailer now.
I really think like 95% of the time where I have deep regrets, it is all related to once we're unhooked and we're driving around town. Usually the camper is not the concern that we have.
No, but we do not pull over when we're towing. You know, we tow from one campsite to another campsite. We try to keep it 2 to 5 hours tops, and we don't pull over and do any sightseeing. We don't. To us, that's just out of our realm of a safety net. We want to stay on truck routes. We want to stay close to our route. We want to be on the interstate or whatever. We don't want to be, you know, sightseeing or in parking lots at malls, you know.
Yeah. It may be important to say, when we say we plan a lot, it's probably overkill.
Yeah.
But everything is strategized to make life as easy as possible.
Yeah.
Probably on purpose because we get real high-strung if things get out of control.
Yeah.
Our travel days, we leave in the sunlight. We get there in the sunlight. We're staying for usually a week or 2, if not longer. So we're not hitching and unhitching this thing every couple of days. And so if you're like you're traveling all over constantly, maybe 42 would be a lot to deal with.
Yeah, that's true.
But for us, I think we plan it perfectly that 42 has not impacted us at all.
And just to pepper it in, that we also are very diligent.
Diligent and vigilant. We're diligent.
We are also very diligent about our safety checklist.
Yeah.
We get out of this vehicle, or we get out of the vehicle, and Clint's like, okay, what's next? And I'm like, hold on, I've got to get it pulled up on my phone. Like, we go point by point, because I don't have a very good memory. I forget stuff. We're not both in the same area at the same time. I'm not going to assume that he did something, and he's not going to assume that I did something. So if it's not checked off, we go to there, and that's where we start on our lists. And we'll share those eventually.
Yep. It's written in Clint and Sarah code right now, so it wouldn't make any sense.
So, do you have any questions about our camper, our truck, the size, fifth wheel? You know, we'll do our best to answer. So if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments.
Also, before you start feverishly typing, this is just our experience. If you've got a short one and you love it,
tell us about it.
Yeah, let us know.